Good evening, people. Thank you for listening to J-Ho, the Sports Dude. Welcome to my sports podcast. And hold on, let's shut this thing off. All right, then. Thank you. And today we got a lot to talk about. We got the NHL Playoffs with the Bruins. It's been announced who they're going to play in the first round. And then we got the Red Sox and the Celtics. And we'll go from there. But first, I have a very special guest on today. He's my pal, Garrett. Nice to see you, Garrett. Would you like to introduce yourself to the audience?
Yeah, thank you, J-Ho, for having me on, first and foremost. I am Gehrig Schilling. First and foremost, I am from Medfield, Massachusetts. I moved back here in 2003 when this little club called the Boston Red Sox picked up a guy I know by the name of Curt Schilling. And the rest is kind of history from there. 15 years has passed. I'm a student at UMass where I got to meet you, my man.
Yeah.
And we get to sit down and talk about some sports, so I'm excited.
Yeah. Your dad's Curt Schilling. How was that growing up? That must be interesting.
It's a question I get asked a lot. One of my proudest accomplishments to date, being born into that family. But in all seriousness, the answer I give every time when people ask me that question is it was normal for me. I didn't know life any other way growing up, and it's been a real blessing to get to see and be a part of a lot of things I got to be a part of, especially in the sports world. So I'm really grateful.
Yeah, that's awesome. Your dad definitely had a big part in the 2004 World Series. But actually, the big reason I wanted to have you on is because you're a big Bruins hockey fan.
Die hard.
Yeah, die hard. How did you get into hockey, especially growing up in a house where baseball was, I'm assuming, like, pretty prevalent?
Yeah, baseball is definitely always the biggest part of my life growing up, especially from ages 6 to 12. I lived in Arizona most of the time, so there's really no hockey culture out there up until this little guy called Austin Matthews, who we'll get around to in a second, brought hockey out there to the West Coast. But yeah, I didn't even learn to skate until I was about 15 years old. At 16, I was trying out for my high school hockey team, and I fell in love with the Bees right around their 2011 Cup run. So everything just came together, like, timing-wise for me perfectly. So I just fell in love with the game being in the Northeast.
Yeah. What position did you play, by the way?
I started as a forward, very modest ankle-bending forward that showed my dad's speed on the ice. So I made the transition to netminder just because it was a more natural me versus everyone type of position, like pitching, like I had been raised to do my whole life. So and then I played that for 2 more years until I graduated high school.
All right, sounds pretty cool. So why don't we move into the Bruins, shall we? So the first matchup for the Bruins is, unsurprisingly, the Maple Leafs. It's deja vu again. It is like yesterday that we were playing this team in the playoffs.
Yep,
but
it was kind of.
Yeah. Before we do that, I just want to go over the result. Oh, and I forgot to mention last year the Bruins won in 7th game in TD Garden in a pretty crazy high scoring game. Mm-hmm. So, and before we go to that, so the last 6 games, Bruins beat the Rangers 6-3. They lost to Florida 4-1. They lost to Detroit 6-3. Beat Columbus 6-2, where Marchand actually scored his 100th point, and beat the Minnesota Wild 3-0, and unfortunately lost to Tampa Bay 6-3. So let's go over these teams as far as their regular season performance. So Boston won 49 games, lost 24, and had 9 overtime losses. Toronto had 26 wins, 28 losses, and 8 overtime losses, and 100 points, and the Bruins had 107. So second and third in the division. So would you like to go over the Bruins lineup?
Yeah. You already mentioned the man himself, Brad Marchand, hitting that triple-digit mark. First Bruin to do that since 2002, 2003.
By the way, is it Marchand or Marchand? I've heard both. I think it's Marchand, but I've heard both.
If you ask him, I think he'd say it's Brad Marchand. He has a little bit of a twist to everything. He's a character. But yeah, his like I said, his 100 points is the first since Jumbo Joe Thornton in 02-03.
Yep.
Big milestone for the kid. He also played in an absurd amount of games this year. A lot of the Bruins had a lot of injury, missed about 15 games on average per top 6 guy, both defensive and offensively. So it's a big deal that he put up numbers like that. It's a big deal he's been healthy the whole year. Other than that, you can go right down the line. J-Ho has this awesome little list here with just guys that are going to be, no better word than key, notable forwards and defensemen going into the playoffs. You go down the line, Bergeron, Pastrnak, Krejci. Those 4 guys for me are going to be your core group right there, as they always have been, minus Pastrnak. Krejci, on the other hand, though, for me, in that group of 4 specifically, is going to have to step up. He played the most games of those 4 guys all year and produced the least amount of points. He's been, if you look back on our past playoff runs, one of the top scorers, if not the top scorer, every time we've gone deep. So for me, Krejci is going to have to step it up.
Yep, I agree. And then there are other forwards. You got Danton Heinen, Jake DeBrusk, you got Sean Corrali. So they're there. And then of course you got the defensemen. Big Z, Zdeno Chara, still going strong in there.
Yep, just re-signed another year too.
Yep. Charlie McAvoy. You got Torrey Krug.
My guy, Torrey Krug, Michigan State.
Yeah, nice. John Moore, Brandon Carlo. So you got the defensemen who can definitely play a big part in this series.
Yep.
And of course you got the goalies. You got Tuukka Rask, who I'm pretty sure is probably going to be starting.
Yeah, he'll start 100%.
Yeah, and then you got Harslav Halak. And then, of course, for coach, you got Bruce Cassidy. And now let's talk about the Maple Leafs roster. They definitely have a lot on the table for them.
Ridiculous amount of talent on this forward list if you just look at these names. Austin Matthews, John Tavares, Mitch Marner, Kasperi Kapanen too, Zach Hyman, Nazem Kadri is their little Marchand. I mean, that top 3 right there, Marner, Tavares, and Matthews, that's a scary group to look at right there. And that's going to be the key for those Bruins defensemen you just talked about too, shutting down those guys.
Yeah. So Maple Leafs defensemen, they got Morgan Riley, Ron Hainsley, Jake Gardner, remember him?
Yep.
Travis Dermott, and Jake Muzzin. So those are probably the Maple Leafs top defensemen. And for goalies, they have 3 goalies, but I believe Freddie Anderson's basically going to be playing the entire series.
No doubt.
And they got Garrett Sparks and Mitch Hutchinson. And coach is still Mike Babcock.
Mikey Babcock.
Yep. So let's look at some stats from this year from the regular season. So goals per game definitely goes to advantage to the Leafs. Leafs were 4th in 3.49 goals. Bruins were 11th with 3.13 goals. Defense, landslide Bruins. Goals against per game, the Bruins were 3rd with 2.59 goals. The Maple Leafs were 20th with 3.04 goals. Power play percentage, so special teams. Bruins are better in that. The Bruins are 3rd, and the Maple Leafs are 8th. So Bruins are 25.9%, and Maple Leafs are 21.8%. And penalty kill, Bruins are 16th, and Maple Leafs are 17th. Actually, they're both at 79.9%. So it's kind of a wash.
Yeah,
I guess.
Special teams in terms of power play and penalty kill are pretty dead even. I mean, the 5 places separating them in power play is about 4%.
I would give it the edge to the Bruins. I think they have the stronger power play.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I think their team right now, even this last 10 games, you had that little list at the top of the recently played games. They've just played better than the Maple Leafs recently down the stretch too, which is a big deal.
Yeah. So and in the regular season, the Bruins won 3 of the 4 matchups with the Maple Leafs. So, undefeated at home and 1-1 in Toronto.
Yep.
So the Bruins,
which is a big deal too, because the Bees have a home seed.
Yeah, they have home ice, and so Bruins at home. Speaking of that, are 29-9-3 at home. So they've been pretty dominant at home. Bruins on the road. Bruins are 20-15-6, so not as great. Leafs are 23-16-2 at home, and Maple Leafs are 23-12-6 on the road. So, actually, the Maple Leafs are a pretty decent road team. So, all right then. So why don't we go into some factors what the Bruins need to do to win this series? So, in my opinion, the 2 players you gotta limit are Austin Matthews and John Tavares.
Yep,
those are the 2 guys that if they go off, then it's gonna get really ugly. Like last year, I thought they did a pretty good job of not letting uh, Austin Matthews really making an impact on this series, and Mitch Marner did have an impact. So, but like I think I'd rather have him make an impact than Austin Matthews.
Yep. I mean, it's like you said, it's going to come down to limiting those opportunities between, like you said, Tavares and Matthews. But like you mentioned there at the end, Mitch Marner, don't count this kid out. He's 21 years old. He had 94 points in 82 games this year. The kid's an absolute stud. He plays on that team with those stud guys, but to be 21 years old and producing at that level already and not come out of the draft as an Austin Matthews or a Jack Eichel type is impressive. So
Yeah.
those top scorers are definitely going to have to be limited if we want to take this series.
All right then. And the next factor that I think the Bruins need to do to beat the Maple Leafs is kind of similar to last year. Be physical with them and take advantage of the Leafs' shaky defense.
Exactly.
Like the Leafs, they can score, but I think if you hit them and beat them up a little bit, it'll disrupt their opportunities and their timing. And I think I just don't know if they have quite the experience to deal with getting hit around a bit. And their defense is not that good, so
Yep.
so the Bruins can definitely take advantage of that. They definitely took advantage of Jake Gardner last year. So
Yeah. Oh yeah. The defensive thing is definitely going to be a huge glaring issue in this playoffs if the Bruins do end up sweeping them or playing them in less than 7 games. I think they'll end up going to 7 with the Bees and the Bruins will end up winning. But personally, watching last year's playoffs, that's purely a matchup thing. These teams are pretty dead even, as you went through the stats earlier and displayed. But when it comes down to it, defense and goaltending is what ends up winning these playoff series in the long run. And you pointed out Jake Gardner. He's not the only glaring hole in their defense, but he's one of many.
yeah. So and so just getting and also obviously getting shots and getting some bad looks for Freddie Anderson, because Freddie Anderson was probably the reason why they were even close last year to the Bruins, I think. So throwing him off is pretty important too.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That's how we beat them in 13 with, can't remember his name, but made the excuse that the puck was blending in with the black seats, man. Whatever it takes in these series. In 2013, I forget the goalie's name, but I think it's Jake something. Whatever his name was, he said he couldn't see the puck during Game 7 when we came back down 4-1 or whatever, just because the seats in the Garden are black. Buddy, the seats in the Garden weren't empty. It was Game 7. Anyways.
Yeah.
You were mentioning, though, getting contributions, I think, was your next point.
Yeah.
From younger guys on the roster
so
this
younger
year?
Guys on the team. So we know what Brad Marchand and Pasternak and Bergeron can do. So obviously, when you look at the Maple Leafs, they're gonna try to shut them down. So I think the guy you were mentioning was it James Reimer?
James Reimer. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I remember that name. I kind of got lost.
Like him, it got lost.
Yeah. So so there might be some games in which Marchand and Bergeron and Pasternak might not have the impact that they might. So it's important to get contributions for the younger players. So Jake DeBrusk, and from the besides the top line. So Jake DeBrusk, David Krejci, Danton Heinen, Charlie McAvoy, Torrey Krug.
Yep.
Will have to make an impact, and Sean Corrali could be X factor. He can hit some pretty big goals. So
same with my guy Chris Wagner, the Walpole Wagon. I really like this team, specifically like the 11 Cup team, just because of that fourth line and the depth we have on this team. I mean, I'm looking at line combinations today, and we're trying to find a way to put Backus into this lineup. That's how good it is right now. And you mentioned Sean Corrali could be a huge X factor. I have guys like Chris Wagner being X factors throughout this series and throughout the playoffs. If you go back to that 2011 Cup run, we played 25 games in the postseason, 3 7-game series and a 4-game sweep over the Philadelphia Flyers. And in all those games, you had guys like Chris Kelly, Gregory Campbell, Danny Paille, Sean Thornton, all stepping up and doing what they had to do to be a part of the winning organization. So, like you said, these guys step up and get their contributions, maybe not on the score sheet, but in the game period, make an impact. I think that can lead to another cup run.
Yeah, of course. The last factor is Rask needs to be consistent. I don't think he needs to be like Marty Brodeur or
Yep.
like Patrick Waugh. He doesn't. I don't think he needs to be quite that. He just needs to play consistent and not implode.
He needs to be Tuukka Rask.
Yeah. In my opinion, I think this is going to be a great series. I think we're going to get a lot of great close games. There might be one blowout in there, but I think this will be like last year, a great series. But I think the Bruins are a better team. I think they have more experience. The fact that they're at home and how dominant they've been at home is a big factor. And I think the fact that the Bruins they can score, and the Maple Leafs their defense is kind of shaky, I think gives the Bruins the edge. I was thinking about picking the Bruins in either 6 or 7. I picked 6 because I think me personally last year, I think they kind of, when they went up 3-1, they kind of relaxed a little bit and didn't like stomp on the Maple Leafs quick enough, and that made the series go a little longer than it probably should have. So I'm picking the Bruins in 6.
Yep. So I already said it, but I have them in 7, and I can add a little more detail to that because I honestly think, and it happened last year if you look back, the Capitals, and then I've mentioned our 11 Cup run a couple of times already. Both those teams went down 0-2 in their first series, and actually the Capitals ended up going into overtime in those next 2 games in Columbus last year in the first round and ended up winning the whole thing. So I think adversity breeds true in these playoffs, especially the NHL playoffs. That's why I think the Bruins will actually lose those first 2 games at home and not have a good home ice to start, and then end up taking it to 7. Part of having these young teams with guys that haven't been there before is having to dive through adversity. And like I said, if you go back and look at the 11 team, they faced so much adversity in 3 7-game series. So I think it'll be Bruins in 7.
Okay. Do you want to add any more factors do you think could impact this series?
I mentioned my outside one with Chris Wagner. I love that guy.
Okay, yeah.
I think he's a stud. I think he's a grinder. I think he does all the parts of his game necessary and doesn't try to overreach. So, I think if the Bruins just stick to the game they played all year and play that sound defensive style they've always played when they go deep, that there's no team that can stop us.
Okay. All right, then. So I pick a 6. You pick 7. I was thinking either 6 or 7.
Yep.
But all right then. So I thought it'd be fun to go through each matchup in the playoffs and pick who we're going to win and how many games you think it'll be. Because I actually put down in my description what I think. Yep. So you can let me know what you think. So the first matchup.
Do you want to go back and forth, or do you want to you go? Or do you want to go you go I go, or do you want to go?
I'll go. And
all right, let's go.
Let's go. Okay. So Lightning versus Blue Jackets. So, I think this is going to be a sweep. I was thinking either 5 or 4, but honestly, I can't imagine the Blue Jackets winning a game. What do you think?
All right, so this is where my a little bit of obsession is going. So I've watched more Columbus Blue Jackets games probably than most people from Columbus, and they finished strong record-wise, but not statistically. Those last few games they played, they kind of stunk, to be honest.
Yeah.
And not to mention their goalie has a horrible track record in the playoffs. I think his save percentage is sub 900 in the postseason. Bobrovsky, that is.
Yeah.
Tampa has 11 double-digit goal scorers, including 3 guys with over 40 goals. That's ridiculous in today's NHL. But not to be trifled with, Columbus went and made a bunch of big moves at the deadline. They went out and got Matt Duchene at the deadline from Colorado. He has not played up to standard, but he's a guy that has been yearning for an opportunity to get into the postseason and maybe prove that he's a better player than he is when he's in the regular season. Depth is Tampa's advantage, but do not underestimate Columbus. They have a good back end and they have a good strong depth down the middle with that recent Duchene ad. But like you said, I think Tampa's a better team. I think Tampa takes it in 6 though.
Oh, okay. All right then. So our next series, Capitals versus Hurricanes. So the Hurricanes are a very likable team. I like their energy. I like the whole post-game celebration thing. And I think this could be a pretty entertaining series, but I got the Capitals in 6.
Yep.
What do you think?
I got Caps as well. I didn't have a specific amount of games I written down just because this one's kind of a gut one to me. I'll say 5, but just because I think to be honest, Columbus is a better team than Carolina, despite where they finish in the standings, and that's why I give them more games against a better team in Tampa Bay. Just because I think that I think the Hurricanes ride a lot of what you just said with the momentum and they got the swagger going and the post game celebration. Like, they're a very fun team to root for, but I don't know how far that gets you past the first round of the NHL playoffs.
Yeah, honestly, it doesn't. But and the next series, now this is an interesting one. So you got the Penguins versus the Islanders. I'm actually impressed that the Islanders actually made it to this point.
Yeah, they're. I mean, if you asked anyone at the beginning of the year, they weren't going to make it just based on losing Tavares and not getting anything back for him.
Yeah.
Where their team had gone, who their star players were. I mean, if you looked at that roster at the beginning of the year, outside of Matty Barzal, like, I'm not sure you could name another 3 guys on that team if you didn't watch hockey.
Yeah. So. And these are 2 pretty different teams. The Penguins are they're pretty offensive heavy. Their defense, from what I could tell, is not very good. The Islanders are a defensive team, and I think they're ranked number 1 in the NHL in defense. But offensively, I mean, they don't have a lot of
third least goals, I think, if not the least. To be honest, no offensive production for that team. But you look at Barry Trotz, their coach. I mean, he's always played to his talents, and he just had an offensive squad in Washington. That's why New York Islanders being a playoff team right now is a thing, because of Barry Trotz, who has the recipe to defeat Pittsburgh now. We found out last year.
Yeah, but does he do it this year?
I don't think so.
No, I don't think so either.
I'm trying to talk it up so it makes it seem like I might go the other way, but yeah, no chance. No chance.
No. I think this will be a fun series like the other one, but I'm going Pittsburgh in 6.
Yeah, I had Pittsburgh in 6 as well, just because I think that their team is so much more battle tested. First of all, I think it's one of those series where it's going to be low scoring, and maybe young Sidney Crosby gets frustrated when he's not scoring a point a game. But new Sid has the leadership and the conscience and the ability to think or to realize that, okay, well, I guess this little guy named Evgeny Malkin or Phil Kessel or any of the other studs I have around me on this team will put one up in this low scoring game, because you're not going to be playing 5-4 games against the New York Islanders this postseason. No way.
Yeah. All right then. So why don't we move on to the West? So first series is Predators versus Stars. So I got Predators in 5. What do you think?
I hate this series, to be honest. I mean, I like both these teams, but I hate having to come up with who I think is going to do better, because the Stars are they've completely reshaped the type of team that I thought they were 2 years ago. Tyler Seguin, Jamie Benn, those guys scream goal scoring and offensive play. And if you look at the Dallas Stars statistically, they have one of the lowest scoring offenses in all of hockey and the least goals allowed of any team. Their plus minus is almost dead even, just because of how close they play games. And the Predators are a little bit better scoring, but in the same manner. They play close games and they play them hard. So, I mean, if I had to pick, it's going to be Predators in 6, but just because I think the games stay low scoring and close and come down to whoever's the home team in the end.
Yeah. So, yeah, I say Preds in 5. Jets versus Blues. So, the Jets, from what I could tell, like, they kind of... I don't know, they kind of came into this towards the end of the year not particularly strong. And then you got the St. Louis Blues, who kind of came in a little late.
Basically the polar opposite.
Yeah. So, I'm curious what you think, because I got Jets in 7.
So, I actually just heard recently that there's been a little bit of unrest in the Winnipeg Jets locker room between some guys on the team. Dustin Byfuglien had some words with a fellow D partner the other night at the end of the game because he wouldn't come off the ice for a power play or something. They've just had some rumblings of some team not sure what the word I'm looking for is, but some misconduct in the locker room. And I think the Blues, like you said, they've been trending upward since they came out of that dumpster fire at the beginning of the year. And Jordan Binnington has not played in a postseason series. He's going to be fired up. I mean, kids put up unreal numbers in net this whole year. And the Blues have just gotten better as the year has gone on. So I'm actually going to take the underdog. I'll take the Blues in 7 this series.
Yeah, I was tempted, but I think the Jets, I think they'll pull in a little bit, and I think they'll win.
They're a great team. So I that's definitely like a 50-50 for me. I just lean towards the Blues because of recency bias.
Yeah. So we got the Flames and the Avalanche. So the Flames come in, pretty good team.
Yeah.
I don't know about their goaltending, but they're I don't think their goaltending's that great, but they have so much talent like up front. So I'm actually picking the Flames in 6. What do you think?
Yeah, so this series is basically the exact opposite of the Predators Stars. This one's going to be like 8-5. These are going to be like football games sometimes. Like
Yeah.
it's going to be ridiculous, the scoring, I think. But yeah, I have Flames too. I have Flames in 5 actually. I just don't think the Avs have any back end to keep up, and what back end they do have is offensively oriented. So
Yeah.
Yep.
So I got Flames in 6. What do you got?
Flames in 5.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in the final series, we got the Sharks and the Golden Knights. So for the most part, I've been picking favorites, but I think this is an
I think
upset.
you picked favorites in every one but this one.
Yeah, I think because I don't know, I just did like a lot of them I just didn't really feel comfortable.
Yeah, I mean it's hard, dude. It's hard to pick these matchups, just like in any seeded type of tournament. But it's hockey's hockey, man. It's the only sport where that kind of stuff happens.
I think this might be my only upset, even though I'm not really sure how much of an upset. I'm picking the Golden Knights in 7. I've heard that the Sharks, they've been kind of injury prone and they didn't really end the season that great. So that kind of worries me a little bit. So
Yeah.
I'm picking Golden Knights in 7. What do you think?
I agree with you. I have the Golden Knights not just because I like them too. I'd say they're my West Coast team if I had to root for one team in the West Coast. But for me, like I said already, it comes down to your back end and your goaltending when it comes down to playoffs. And the Sharks, their whole thing was getting Erik Karlsson and having the 2 best defensemen in Brent Burns and Erik Karlsson on their back end. And they've done nothing with it, really. Like, if you go look at Martin Jones' stats and their backup goalie stats, for the amount of games they've won, their save percentage versus shots that they give up about 25 to 30 shots a game, which is on the lower tier. And they stink, man. They end up losing games 6-5. And the Vegas Golden Knights, you watched last year, they thrive on being that underdog team, that team that nobody thinks can win. Marc-Andre Fleury specifically. And I agree, man. I think Golden Knights win in 6, though.
All right, then.
Back at home.
I have a question. Who do you think is going to come out of the West? Because I think the East is going to be either the Capitals, the Bruins, or the Lightning, and we tend to be kind of biased towards the Bruins.
Well, it's going to be the Bruins.
Yeah. Okay. We'll go up front, go out on a limb and say the Bruins. But I was actually more curious about the West, because the West is kind of, I mean, I kind of think that whoever comes out of the East is going to win the Cup, but who do you think is going to come out of the West? Because I actually am a little stuck on this.
For me, it's whoever wins the Blues-Jets series.
Okay, really?
Because like I said, I picked the Blues, but if they don't get by the Jets, obviously they're out. But the Jets, I think, are the type of team that needs that one. Like, if they go to Game 7 and they beat the Blues in 7, that's 1,000 times better for that team than winning in a sweep. Because they need to have something to bring that locker room a little closer together, in my mind. I've watched the Calgary Flames all year, enjoy being that fun team that goes out and dominates and goes out on the road and enjoys the clubhouse that they're a part of, the environment they're in. The Penguins know who they are as a team. The Capitals did it last year. The Lightning have been that core group. You look at all these other teams, there's something. I think the Jets need that something in order to make a run, and if they get it in that first round, I think they win.
Okay.
Western Conference, sorry.
I'm going to go on a limb and say the Predators. I think they're the best team in the West, so even though...
I wouldn't even say that's that much of a limb, man. They're a good team.
Yeah. All right, then. And also, I wanted to ask you a question, because this has kind of been coming up a lot since the playoffs started. So, a lot of people have been complaining about the NHL playoff format. So, the way it works is...
I was going to say, explain to those of us who might not know what that means exactly.
Yeah, so this is how the playoff format works. So, the top 3 teams in each division make up the first 12 teams in the playoffs. The remainder 4 spots will be filled with the next 2 highest placed finishers in each conference based on regular season record and regardless of division. It is possible for one division in each conference to send 5 teams to the postseason, while the other just send 3. So, in the first round, the division winner with the best record in each conference will be matched against the wild card with the lesser record, and the wild card will be better with the better record will play the other division winner. So,
I mean, that's happening right now. If if anyone that's listening doesn't understand what that means, you go to the Eastern Conference right now and you look, the Carolina Hurricanes and the Columbus Blue Jackets are both in the Metropolitan Division. Meanwhile, the Atlantic Division just has 3 teams. The Metropolitan and the Atlantic are both in the East. Metropolitan is sending 5 teams to the postseason. The Atlantic is sending 3 right now.
Yeah. So, I don't know. I think that I think this is kind of I don't really like this system that much. I mean, like, the Bruins have the second best record, and they're probably facing the third best team in the NHL.
Yeah.
In the first round. I've always been a component that in a championship, when you win a championship, you just got to beat everybody.
Yeah.
And it doesn't, like, even though the playoff system is kind of iffy, you just got to beat whoever you got to beat. And to say you're the best team, you just got to beat everybody. But on the other hand, like, certain series can, like, a lot of it's nutrition. So, like, a team that, like, faces a lesser team, like, and then and the series is less, they get more rest. And I think part of the reason why Boston got blown out by the Lightning last year is because they got a little tired in the previous series because they played like 7 games.
The 7 games?
Yeah. So, what do you think?
I mean, it's tough, man, because, I mean, like, growing up, who I grew up as a son of an athlete, like, there's the part of me where I got to ask my dad, like, how do you feel about, like, having 3 days rest versus 5 days? And it's different, obviously, for a pitcher in the sport versus a goalie or a forward who's playing all 7 of these games.
Yeah.
But one thing that's consistent through every athlete I've ever gotten to talk to, whether it's junior college level or professional athlete, top of their game, is you have to beat the best no matter what. Like, you're never going to get to the penultimate goal if you don't go through the best. And for us, that might come in the second round if we have to play the Lightning. But we're going to have to play them in the Eastern Conference, whether the playoff format's different or not. You know what I'm saying? And there's something to be said for beating the Tampa Bay Lightning and beating the Toronto Maple Leafs rather than beating the Capitals and having to go through the Hurricanes and maybe the Islanders. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's the path that you have to go through says a lot about the team you are. And that's why I brought up the 11 Cup run and last year when the Capitals lost 2 in 2 straight games at home to start their Cup run.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, like, if we were just going by, like, I don't know, just like an objective look at like the playoff format, it kind of stinks.
Yeah.
But like, you do come better. Like, you prove a lot more by beating the really good teams than just picking on the bad teams.
Definitely, 100%. I mean, Steven Stamkos is the one who came out and spoke out about it this year, saying it sucks that the NHL fan base is basically going to get robbed of 2 of the best 3 teams in the first 2 rounds because of the way it's set up with us, Tampa, and Toronto.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, it sucks in that one way, but at the other hand, and on the other hand, like, the other way we would do it, some else would be like, that sucks. Like, I hate this format. So
yeah. All right, then. Why don't we take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll have to talk about the Red Sox. Yay.
Sounds good.
All right, then. Welcome back to J-Ho, the Sports Dude, and we're going to talk about the Red Sox. But before we go, unfortunately, Garrett has to head out. He's got some work to do. So thank you, Garrett, for being here.
Oh, kidding me, man. Thank you for having me on, J.O. It's been a pleasure. Yeah. I hope to be back soon in the future.
Yeah, I know you might be the biggest hocky fan I know. So so I really want to have you on. So
we'll get some updates if I'm still breathing after this first round.
Yeah. So do you want to say anything before you head out?
No, man. I mean, the bees are a wagon. That's enough said. Thank you again for having me on, man. I really appreciate it.
All right. I'll see you around.
Yep. See you soon, man.
All right, then. All right. Now let's move on to the Boston Red Sox. So the Red Sox have started their season to defend their World Series title. And all I've got to say is it's early. So you shouldn't declare how the season's going to go just based on the first few games. But so far, if the review of the first few games, the season so far has been an unmitigated disaster. There's no other way to put it. This season so far has been a train wreck. So the opener was in Seattle, and also all these games started on the road. I don't really understand why the Red Sox didn't start at home, since they're the World Series champions, but whatever. So game 1, they played Seattle. They lost 12-4 and got their butts whooped. The Boston Red Sox got a lead in the first inning, but then that lead quickly vanished, and the Red Sox were down a bunch, and they lost 12-4. Chris Sale was started, and he was dreadful. Even in the first few innings when he wasn't around allowing any runs, you could just tell that he just wasn't himself. His fastball I don't know, like the thing about Sale is that he has a very smooth pitching motion, and like he but for some reason it just kind of seemed like he's trying to force the balls in, and so he didn't really have the command. So he was just dreadful. He allowed 3 home runs. He got taken out of the third inning, and it was just a complete disaster. Game 2, the Red Sox actually won. They won 7-6, and it actually looked like they were going to lose for a while. Eovaldi pitched. The Red Sox at one point were down 6-1 in the bottom of the fourth, and I was thinking like, oh god, is this going to be like last night again? But then the Red Sox crawled back, and Moreland was able to get the lead on the top of the ninth, hitting a 3-run homer. So in game three, they lost 6-5. Eduardo Rodriguez pitched. At one point, the Red Sox were down 6-2, and you kind of figured that would be the end of the game. But the Red Sox at the end were actually able to make it pretty close, and they made it a 1-run game. But unlike the night before, they couldn't complete the comeback, so they lost. In Game 4, they lost 10-8. Rick Porcello pitched. Things looked pretty good when Boston was up 3-0. And then next thing you know, it was 9-3 Mariners. Rick Porcello was terrible. And then next thing you know, it was basically just over. The Red Sox did make it a little close at the end, but they still lost. So, and the next, you would hope that they would be able to move on when going to the next series. You know, like, that would be an anomaly. And then they played the Oakland Athletics, who are a decent team. And then in Game 1, they looked like poop. They lost 7-0. David Price pitched, and the Red Sox allowed 4 home runs. They looked horrible. In Game 2, they lost 1-0. Chris Sale pitched in this game, and he looked a lot better than he did in his first game, only allowing 1 run. But for some reason, it's I don't know, it just wasn't the same, even though he was pitching well. Like, I think only twice he pitched over 90 miles per hour. So, and he did play well, except this time the offense didn't even show up. Even though they got 7 hits, they just couldn't get a single run. So, and if they would have gotten a few more runs, they definitely would have won this game. But it was a bad offensive showing. So, Game 3, they won 6-3 off a double from Mookie Betts in the 9th inning. Eovaldi pitched in this game, and it looked pretty bleak when they were down 3-0. But Swihart hit a home run, and Moreland hit a double to tie the game. And Mookie Betts was able to hit like I said, a double in the 9th to get the win. And the Red Sox looked like they were back on track. And then Game 4 happened, and the Red Sox lost 7-3. Eduardo Rodriguez pitched, and you thought this would they looked pretty good at first. Red Sox started with a 3-0 lead, but then around 7 straight runs, and they lost. So another series lost. The next, you didn't think it could get any worse. And then they played the Arizona Diamondbacks. And then Game 1, they lost 15-8. With the Arizona Diamondbacks taking a giant poop on the Red Sox. I mean, the Red Sox did get their first run, but that was the only positive in this game. Things just went downhill after that. The Red Sox, Rick Porcello, Rick Porcello was just awful. And at one point, the Red Sox were down 14-1, allowing 4 home runs. What a disgrace. My God. Yeah, this was definitely the low point of the season so far. And let's just hope that this is the low point of the season. At one point, it was 14-1. 14-1. So the Red Sox did put some runs, but it didn't really matter. All right, game 2, they lost 5-4. David Price pitched, and the Red Sox got up to a 3-0 lead. And then Arizona got the lead 4-3. And then Red Sox did tie the game. But in the ninth inning, the Arizona Diamondbacks won with a walk-off single. So now, at this point, they were 2-8, which is tied for the worst start in Red Sox history. I believe the other time was 2011, and they didn't make the postseason that year. So things were looking pretty bad. And then Game 3 happened, and the Red Sox actually won 1-0. And Hector Velasquez started. He didn't pitch. He only pitched 3 innings, but he started, and he did the job. He got the job done. Mitch Moreland was the only one who scored with a home run. And now the Red Sox are 3-8. Let's put this into perspective. Last year, guess how many times the Red Sox have lost 4 out of 5 games? Once. Last year. This year, they're 3-8. So, why don't we talk about this team? Let's go over why this team has been playing so badly. It starts with the starting pitching. The starting pitching has been atrocious. They have allowed 6.28 runs per game, which is ranked 27th, which is only ahead of the Diamondbacks, the White Sox, and the Cubs. And may I remind you that the Red Sox lost 2 out of 3 to the Diamondbacks? And the Red Sox starters have a 9.6 ERA in 9 games, compared to 2.17 in 19 games last year. So, yeah, that's a recipe for success. So let's go over each pitcher. Rick Porcello has an ERA of 13.5. Brian Johnson has a ERA of 12.71. Eduardo Rodriguez has an ERA of 12.38. Nathan Eovaldi has a ERA of 8.1. Chris Sale has an ERA of 8. David Price has an ERA of 6. And honestly, the bullpen hasn't been atrocious. It's been mostly been the starting pitching, who has been awful. Oh, and remember that game 1 against the Diamondbacks, in which I talked about, in which they were down 14-1. Yeah, it got so bad that Eduardo Nunez came in to pitch. Eduardo Nunez! My God. And, also Brian Johnson's the only pitcher with a win. And David Price has the best starting ERA and has the most strikeouts. So, there's that. Oh, and remember how I praised the outfield for the Red Sox? Yeah, it hasn't exactly shown. Not only does the starting pitching stink, the defense stinks. The Red Sox have 9 errors on the season, and they're 26th in fielding. And as far as the offense, it's been okay. It's been kind of on and off. Mookie Betts has been fine. He has a .262 batting average, and he has 5 RBIs. 6 RBIs. So not terrible, but you want a little better than Mookie Betts. JD Martinez has been pretty good this year so far. He has a 333 batting average. He has 3 home runs and 8 RBIs. So JD Martinez has looked pretty good. Andrew Benintendi's looked pretty decent. He has a 293 batting average, 5 RBIs. So Benintendi's looked pretty decent. Devers, 225 batting average, so not great. Jackie Bradley Jr. has been pretty awful with a 184 batting average. Xander Bogaerts has been fine. Oh, and Xander Bogaerts got a new contract too, so I might as well add that. And I'm very happy for Xander Bogaerts, but he's got to play a lot. He's got to play a little better. With a 250 batting average. Mitch Moreland has actually been pretty good for the Red Sox this year. Batting average has not been great, 258, which is okay. But he's had 9 RBIs and 3 home runs. So he's come out pretty big for the Red Sox at times this year too. Eduardo Nunez, pretty bad, 167 batting average. Vasquez, pretty bad, 167 batting average. Brock Holt, 0.63 batting average. Ew. Steve Pearce, 143. Ew. Sam Travis, 286. Not pretty good. He's only had 7 at bats, so not really much, but not bad. Blake Swihart has actually looked pretty decent, only with 16 at bats. He has a 375 batting average with home run and 4 RBIs. So yeah, so that's how the season's going so far. So what have we learned? We learned that the pitching has not been very good. In fact, it's been dreadful. The defense, which you thought you could rely on, has not been very good. The offense comes on and off. A lot of the stars are playing well, but you got everybody else playing pretty badly. So, yeah, that's how you get a 3-8 season so far. So, yes. Yeah. Oh boy. Yeah. So far, this is not how you would want the season to go, but it is what it is. Oh, and I did mention it while I was talking. Xander Bogaerts got a 7-year, $132 million contract extension. He also has an opt-out in the third year of the deal. So, good for Xander Bogaerts. I'm a little I'm mostly happy about this because Xander Bogaerts is a free agent next year, and you secure him for the team for a long period of time. And at a position that the Red Sox definitely need to secure up, which is a shortstop. But at this point, I'm a little curious how this will. I hope that they can re-sign JD Martinez or Mookie Betts. Mookie Betts is going to be a little tricky because he wants I'm assuming he's going to want a really, really big contract considering what happened to the teams this offseason. So, yeah. So, but on the bright side, they're coming off a win. And next team they're going to play is the Toronto Blue Jays, who are not a great team. In fact, I think they're the only team in the AL East that is actually worse than the Red Sox. So, and yeah, so both teams are 3-8, but the Blue Jays I think are a worse team, and the Red Sox are going to be playing at home, and that's where they're going to get their World Series rings. And also, the Blue Jays haven't won a game on the road. So, hopefully they should pick things up against the Blue Jays. And also, I hear that there are going to be some Patriots going to be celebrating at the opener too. So, that should be exciting. All right, then, we'll take a quick break. And when we come back, we'll talk about the Boston Celtics. All right, then, welcome back. And, all right, let's move on to the Boston Celtics. So, the Boston Celtics had a chance to, like I said last week, I'd kind of given up on the idea that they could pass the 76ers, but I still thought they had a pretty good chance of passing the Indiana Pacers, and that's what happened. So they played the Indiana Pacers in TD Garden, and they won 114-112. So this was a pretty competitive game, pretty back and forth. But Kyrie Irving hit a game-winning basket with 0.5 seconds left, and that's all she wrote. So Bogdanovich for the Pacers had 27 points, so he had a pretty good game. But Kyrie Irving hit 30 points and was the star of the game. Aaron Baines had 13 rebounds, and Miles Turner had 11 rebounds for the Pacers. So field goal percentage, Boston shot 51.2. Indiana shot 46.7. 3-point percentage, Boston shot 48.1. 3-point percentage, Indiana shot 44.4. Turnovers, Boston had 14. Indiana had 12. Boston had 52 rebounds. Indiana had 49 rebounds. So, good way to start off the week for the Boston Celtics. And then next, the Celtics played the Brooklyn Nets, who are definitely fighting for a playoff spot. They actually did clinch a playoff spot. So, Not against the Celtics, but so in this game, Kyrie Irving and Horford didn't play, and the Celtics lost 110 to 96. Gordon Hayward had 19 points to lead the team, but D'Angelo Russell had a monster game. He had 29 points. And Gordon Hayward also led the team in rebounding. Boston shot 52.2% from the field, and Brooklyn shot 45.8%. And from three-point range, Boston shot 40%. Brooklyn shot 31.6%. Turnovers, Boston had 15. Brooklyn had 14. Rebounds, Brooklyn had 58, and Boston had 46. So, yeah, pretty rough loss to the Nets, but they were resting Kyrie and Al Horford. So, and then next thing you know, the Boston Celtics were playing the Miami Heat back to back, and they won both games. The first game, the Celtics won 110 to 105. Goran Dragic had 30 points, so he was pretty good, but Kyrie Irving had 25, and the Celtics were able to pull out victory. In the first quarter, Boston pretty much dominated. They led 36 to 17, but Miami was able to crawl back through the rest of the game, but it just wasn't enough, and the Celtics were able to hold on to a lead. Al Horford also had 11 rebounds and 10 assists, so big game for him. Field goal percentage, Boston shot 39.6, Miami shot 45.5. 3-point percentage, Boston shot 42.5, Miami shot 27%, so not very good. Turnovers, Boston had 13, Miami had 15. Rebounds, Boston had 54, and Miami had 55. In the next game, Boston won a little more convincingly. The Celtics won 112 to 102. Gordon Hayward had 25 points. Aaron Baines had 10 rebounds, and Gordon Hayward had 5 assists. Dion Waiters had 21 points, so good for him. Boston shot 47.5, 41.1. 3-point percentage, Boston shot 37.5%, and Miami shot 33.3. Boston had 12 turnovers. Miami had 50 turnovers. Boston had 53 rebounds, and Miami had 57 rebounds. So pretty good victories by the Boston Celtics. And the next thing you know, they were playing the Indiana Pacers in Indiana. And if they won this game, I think it would have been pretty safe to say that they were going to clinch the 4th seed in the East. And that's exactly what happened. In fact, they destroyed the Indiana Pacers throughout this game. The Celtics won 117 to 97. Jason Tatum led the team with 22 points. Aaron Baines had 11 rebounds, and Kyrie Irving had 6 assists. So, Celtics pretty much dominated this game. Field goal percentage, Boston shot 52.2%. Indiana shot 41.3%. From three-point percentage, three-point range was a little less in Celtics' favor, 25.9% from 3. Indiana was 43.5 from 3. Turnovers, both teams had 11. And rebounds, Boston had 56 and Indiana had 52. So, pretty lopsided victory by the Celtics. And before the game against the next opponent, which is the Orlando Magic, the Celtics officially clinched the 4th seed with the Pacers losing. So the Celtics, I can't say really had much to play for, and it kind of showed. They lost to the Orlando Magic, 116 to 108. Kyrie Irving had 23 points, and Marcus Morris had 8 assists and 8 rebounds, and Al Horford had 7 assists, but really wasn't much. DJ Augustine had 13 assists, and Vujicic, I believe, had 12 rebounds, and Terrence Ross had led the team. Actually had 16 points. So Boston shot 47.2% from the field. Orlando shot 45.6%. 3-point percentage, Boston shot 38.7%. Orlando shot 36.4%. Orlando had 16 turnovers. Boston had 14. Orlando had 53 rebounds, and Boston had 45. So, unfortunate loss, but I think for the most part, it didn't really matter because they already clinched a play. They knew what position they were going to play in the playoffs. it was gonna be a long shot to beat to pass the 76ers, but because so for that reason I kind of figured it wasn't gonna happen, and they didn't. But yeah, this is a little early, and I'll talk a little bit more about it when we talk about the NBA playoffs. But I actually feel pretty comfortable about the Celtics playing the Indiana Pacers. I think they're gonna beat them. I'll go into that a little more later. And looking at this team, I've liked that they played a lot better down the stretch. When they really keyed on playing well, I've liked what I've seen from this team. Offensively and defensively, they've played a lot better, especially on defense. And yeah, I think Gordon Hayward's been playing pretty decently. I think if Gordon Hayward can play well, I think the Celtics have a really good shot of getting to the NBA Finals. Because honestly, I think Gordon Hayward's the X factor for this team. Because Tatum and Kyrie, we kind of know what we're going to get from them. But I think Gordon Hayward's a big X factor. If he can play well, then forces teams to guard him. Because Hayward has a lot of talent and allows him to be on the floor. Because he could rebound and play defense. So yeah, that's what I see for now. Next, the Celtics are playing a pretty meaningless game. They're playing the Washington Wizards, who this week fired Ernie Grunfeld, their GM, who is not a great GM, even though he's been around for quite a bit in the NBA. And I think in Washington they threw parties when he got fired. And I expect a lot of starters to sit in this game. And actually, that's the case. Aaron Baines is out. Jaylen Brown's probable. Gordon Hayward's out. Al Horford's out. Kyrie Irving's out. Marcus Morris is out. Marcus Smart is out. Jason Tatum's out. Daniel Tice is out. Questionable. And Yabusele is probable. So you're probably going to see basically none of the starters are playing. So yeah, this game's. It's nice to go out with a bang, especially against a team that's had a pretty miserable season, but I don't really expect. I'm probably not gonna really pay attention much to this game. On to the playoffs. All right then. Why don't we? Before we go, here is the segment. Quick stories. So quick stories is our stories that I don't really have a ton to say about them, but they're the big stories of the week. So I figured I'll address them. So let's start with the first quick story. So. Let's talk a little March Madness. So Michigan State beat Duke in the tournament, which was a pretty big shock because I think most people had Duke winning the whole thing. So I think a lot of people's brackets got ruined because of Michigan State. And it was a pretty close game at the end. You thought Duke would be able to pull it out because that's kind of what they did the last two games against UCF and Virginia Tech. But it didn't happen, and Michigan State was able to pull out for a win at the end. So, pretty underwhelming results for, I guess, a lot of people who were thinking Duke was going to win and Duke fans. But I would say entertaining year, and now it's time for Zion to go into the draft. And I'm assuming he's going to be number one. And also today is the national championship for college basketball. Texas Tech beat Michigan State. And Virginia beat Auburn with a foul on a three-pointer at the end, and some controversy with the foul. And also, did Ty Jerome double dribble? So I looked at it. I think that was a foul. It kind of stinks for the game to end like that, but I think there was enough contact to call a foul. So I don't think that was a bad call. Did Ty Jerome double dribble? Yeah, I think in real time it's kind of hard to see that stuff, but he did double dribble, and they did miss that call. So, but Virginia and Texas Tech are in the final. I think I have a hard time picking who's gonna win it all. You got Texas Tech, the surprise team. You got Virginia, the team that always underachieved but has finally made it. I think I've been downing Virginia all year. So, because I've always had a hard time trusting them, because they've always kind of underachieved in the playoffs. So, I might go Virginia. they've kind of sold me, even though they probably should have lost the last game. So I think Virginia's going to win this game. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I mean, whatever. All right, next, the Jets unveiled some new uniforms. So I don't. If you want to know what these look like, you can look it up. But I mean, I'm not a Jets fan. I don't really like the Jets. But looking at these uniforms objectively, I would say the helmet looks pretty cool. It looks kind of like the 80s, 90s helmets that they used to have. So I kind of like the helmet. I don't really like the jerseys at all. I don't really like. They look a little too weird to me. They look like green Power Ranger jerseys. So, all right, next topic. So the AAF has suspended operations, and if you don't know what the AAF is, it's the Alliance of American Football, and there's probably a reason why you haven't heard of the AAF, and that reason is why they're probably not going to be functioning anymore. So, they have suspended operations because they did not have enough money to fund operations. I mean, I can't say I'm super surprised. They didn't exactly. I don't think they really promoted the company very well, and I don't think the gimmick of taking NFL busts in your league is enough of a promotional material to found a league, and so. And plus, like, they didn't really have it on a big network. I didn't even know about it until, like, right when it came out. I was like, is this a thing? Is Bill Polian a part of this? What the heck is this? Like, it wasn't on Fox it was on the NFL network. And, like, I had no idea about it. So, I just think this was and plus, like, whenever you're trying to go up against the NFL is so big. Like, and plus, like, after the NFL season, I don't think people are really in the mood for football. So I think everybody wants to just focus on other sports. And so I think that's a problem with the XFL coming in. I just think I just think it's hard to found a league, especially competing or at least like being next to the NFL. Next story, John Calipari got a lifetime contract. Former UMass basketball coach and current Kentucky coach John Calipari got a lifetime contract. Good for him. He's a great coach. Lifetime contract. I understand why for John Calipari. He's a great coach and you want stability at the position, and I'm sure there are some incentives in case like some controversy happens and John Calipari does something illegal or something like that. But I don't know. I generally don't think there are a ton of coaches that deserve a lifetime contract. I think Saban, Belichick, Popovich, like those guys deserve a lifetime contract. Calipari's a great coach. Oh, and Mike Krzyzewski deserves a lifetime contract too. I wouldn't put John Calipari in that class, but I think he's a really good coach, and I'm happy that John Calipari got this contract. Now, this is an interesting story. So, I'm sure guys have heard of Ron Darling, former pitcher for the Mets. He does broadcasting for the playoffs on TBS when it's not on Fox. He also grew up in Massachusetts too. So, he recently released a book, and that book has caused kind of a ruckus. Apparently he says that in the 1986 World Series Game 3, yes, this is the series that the ball went under Bill Buckner's leg. In Game 3, his teammates Lenny Dykstra, I think that's how you say his name, said racial insults to Red Sox pitcher Dennis Oil Can Boyd. Lenny has denied this. So if this is true, wow. Yeah, this ain't good. I mean, obviously, I'm sure it was a less tolerant time back then, but if this is true, yeah, this ain't looking good for Lenny. Here's another story. So, there's an article from Bleacher Report about the Packers and how dysfunctional they are between Aaron Rodgers and Mike McCarthy. It talks about how Mike McCarthy was incompetent when it came to offensive play calling and how he couldn't adapt. And one of the interesting things about the article is that it mentioned that Mike McCarthy missed teams to get a massage. What? Aaron Rodgers it says that Aaron Rodgers would continue to undercut Mike McCarthy, and that he resents Mike McCarthy for passing him up when he was with the 49ers. When Mike McCarthy was with the 49ers, and the 49ers passed on Aaron Rodgers. So, like, these are anonymous sources, and usually when you have an article with anonymous sources, I don't completely believe all of it, but I always believe that articles like this, there's always some truth to them. This kind of gives me flashbacks to last year when Ian O'Connor posted that article about Tom Brady and Bill Belichick, and how Brady and Belichick, there was tension between them with Alex Guerrero and Jimmy Garoppolo and Robert Kraft and all that stuff. So, I don't know. Maybe Aaron Rodgers can bounce back like the Patriots did, but Mike McCarthy's gone. And Mike McCarthy does deny a lot of this, as you would expect. But, yeah, if this is true, then how are they able to function? Jeez, my God. To me, what this shows is how impressive and how amazing the relationship between Tom Brady and Bill Belichick is. Like, they don't agree on everything. Tom Brady is a flashy, good-looking guy who, and like Bill Belichick is like a grumpy, like he can be hard to embrace, but they both understand the same language and they both communicate with each other really well. So to me, this really shows how great the relationship between Bill Belichick and Tom Brady is. And just to see how this relationship just completely fell apart. And I do believe that at the end, that their relationship did fall apart. That I do believe. That in the end, they just couldn't be with each other, and it just wasn't going to work. All right, then. Next, something interesting happened this week. So, Paul Pierce and the NBA Countdown crew were talking about Dwayne Wade. And the question came to Paul Pierce, who's better, him or Dwayne Wade? And guess who he said? Himself. Paul Pierce said that he's better than Dwayne Wade. And the internet had a ruckus with this. The internet trashed Paul Pierce. His wife, Gabrielle Union, trashed Paul Pierce. It was a field day on Twitter. So Paul Pierce is my favorite Celtic of all time. And I will say this is probably closer than a lot of people are giving me credit for. Why don't we look at their resumes, shall we? So Paul Pierce has 1 championship. Dwayne Wade has 3 championships, even though I would argue Dwayne Wade wasn't the star of 2 of those championships. It was LeBron James. And with Paul Pierce, I would say he was the catalyst of that 2008 team, even though Kevin Garnett and Ray Allen were there. And plus, this was closer to Paul Pierce's end of his prime. So, playoffs played 14 for Pierce, Dwayne Wade 13. All-Stars, Paul Pierce is 10, Dwayne Wade has 13. All NBA first team, Dwayne Wade has 2, Paul Pierce has 0. All NBA teams, Paul Pierce has 4, Dwayne Wade is 8. All defensive team, Dwayne Wade is 3, Paul Pierce is 0. Scoring leaders, Paul Pierce has 0, Dwayne Wade has 1. All-time points, Paul Pierce actually has more than Dwayne Wade. Paul Pierce has 26,397 points. Dwayne Wade has 23,111 points. Paul Pierce has more rebounds than Dwayne Wade. He has 7,527 points. Dwayne Wade has 4,919 points. Assists, Dwayne Wade has more. Steals, Paul Pierce has more. Blocks, Dwayne Wade has more. Total games, Paul Pierce. Field goal percentage, Dwayne Wade is a higher field goal percentage. 3-point percentage, Paul Pierce has a higher 3-point percentage. Free throw percentage, Paul Pierce has a higher free throw percentage. And points per game, Dwayne Wade has advantage in that. Rebounds per game, Paul Pierce has advantage of that. Assists, Dwayne Wade. Steals per game, Dwayne Wade has an advantage in that. And blocks per game, Dwayne Wade has a higher blocks per game. So all I gotta say is, what do you think Paul Pierce was gonna say? I mean, what do you think he was gonna say, that he was not as good as Dwayne Wade? Athletes are very proud, okay? Like, you have to have a certain amount of arrogance and confidence to get far in sports. So I obviously he's gonna think, as a competitor, he's gonna think he's better than Dwayne Wade. I would actually give the edge to Dwayne Wade, because I think defensively he was a better player than Paul Pierce. So even though I love Paul Pierce, I believe Dwayne Wade's a better player. But it's closer than I think people are giving it credit for. I just I don't understand how this became such a big deal. I mean, what do you think he was going to say? I mean, Paul Pierce is a proud dude. Come on. Ay. Okay. Next story, LeBron it's confirmed he will sit out this for the rest of the season. With the Lakers out of the playoffs. Whatever. Moving on. So this is a weird story. So, Antonio Brown, recently decided to mouth off Twitter. So he started by saying, "Keep your emotions off the internet," and then next thing you know, some guy posted that Juju Smith-Schuster was the MVP, was voted by his team the MVP by the Steelers. And this is how Antonio Brown decided to respond. I'm not going to try to sound like Antonio Brown. Emotion. Boy fumbled the whole postseason in biggest game ever. Everyone went blind and busy making guys famous. Not enough reality these days. By the way, check the list. And Juju Smith-Schuster decided to respond by saying, "Keep your emotions off the internet." And he said, "All I ever did was show the man love and respect from the moment I got into the league. I was genuinely happy for him when he got traded to Oakland with a big contract. And now he takes shots at me on social media. Crazy how big that ego got to take shots at people who show you love." Antonio Brown, please shut your mouth. What's wrong with you? What did Juju ever do to you? What? Because he got MVP? Well, I mean, Juju Smith-Schuster didn't sit out a game. I mean, what's wrong with you? Just move on. Like, they traded you. They got, the Steelers did what you wanted. You want to leave? You left. So why are you this petty and why do you care what's going on with the Steelers? I mean, does it still bother you on how things went? Get over it. My God. Oh, jeez. Good luck, Oakland, dealing with this guy. How do you think he's gonna feel when Derek Carr, a quarterback who isn't as good as Ben Roethlisberger, plays and throws interceptions and doesn't throw him the ball? I think that's gonna turn out. Jeez, I'm not even a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. I don't like Pittsburgh, but this story makes me angry. What's this man's problem? Hey, here's some advice. Don't respond to fans on the internet. You look petty, you look weak, and you're only doing what that person wants. And what did Juju ever do to you? Juju's a classy guy. And you're an obnoxious jerk. Ay. Jeez, I thought OBJ was a diva. I might need to apologize for all the bad things I've said about Odell Beckham Jr. Odell Beckham Jr. can be annoying, but I don't think he's ever done anything like this. Or Terrell Owens. Or Dez Bryant. Or any of the other diva wide receivers. Jeez, my God. Alright then, that'll be at the end of the show. Thank you for listening to J-Ho, the Sports Dude. And thanks, Garrett, for being on the show. You were a very good guest. And next week, we got a lot more stuff to talk about, and I'm out.